and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR, and we're here to talk about all the things going on in the Big Ten. It's the basketball episode. We're going to be talking hoops. We're going to be talking a lot of in-season tournaments. Purdue won the Maui Invitational. Ohio State won the Emerald Coast Classic. Penn State went winless in the ESPN's Event Invitational. We're going to go through all of those and some more. And, of course, we've got our IU resident, Often Daunted, Burke, with us today, so we'll talk a little bit of IU just to make him happy. Burke, how are you doing? Tell the people who you are, where they can find you at.
Hey, I am doing better after the second half of the Harvard game, but it has been a struggle this season. It's been fun covering this team, but it has been it's been painful at times. That being said, hey, I'm Burke White. You can catch me everywhere you get your podcasts at Often Daunted. That's the name of the show. You can find me on all socials at Often Daunted. And JR, I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah, man, glad to have you here. We also got Frank from Boiler Express with us. Frank, go and introduce yourself and tell people where they can find you at.
Yeah, name's Frank. As he said, I am with Boiler Express Podcast. You can find us at Twitter. It's kind of our primary presence at Boiler_Express. You can also find us on YouTube and Facebook where we go live. If audio is your thing, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, really anywhere you can listen to audio podcasts, you can find us on there. Super stoked to be here tonight, talk some ball, and looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here, both of you guys. Appreciate it. Love both your insights and love both your podcasts. So I'm glad to have you guys here. All right. Well, before we get started, just a reminder, we are brought to you by Big Banter Sports, BigBanterSports.com for all your Big Ten media needs. Check out all your basketball and football content you need over there. And hey, if you're watching on YouTube, please do like and subscribe. We appreciate that. Helps the podcast. Even if you're like, I hate this podcast, downvote us. I don't care. It helps us out. Okay. So just do something. Comment, I hate you. It doesn't matter. Just do something. It helps put it out there more. If you're on podcast, please do leave us a rating. We appreciate that. I have no idea what the ratings do for the podcast. So, I appreciate a 5-star rating, but also be honest. We want to know what you think of the podcast and do that kind of stuff. So, all right, guys, let's get into it. First story we're going to talk about is Keisei Tominaga. Nebraska is 7-0. Currently atop the Big Ten standings right now. Purdue is most likely going to be tied with them at the end of tonight, as they're playing Texas Southern right now, and it's going Purdue's way, as I have it on my iPad here next to me. But I do want to talk about this Nebraska team because I tweeted out a few days ago, Penn State was up there with the undefeateds of Purdue and Nebraska. Of course, they lost 3 games. We'll talk about them a little bit later on. But this is kind of unexpected. I don't think people expected a Nebraska team to start 7-0. Keisei Tominaga is playing really well. Burke, what are your thoughts on Tominaga this year and what he's doing for the Cornhuskers?
I mean, Keisei's been great. I truly thought, though, at the jump of the season, it was going to be him just going out there and hunting every shot opportunity he could. It looks like this season he's working within the offense a lot better, slowing it down. He's not forcing anything. The shots are making themselves present, and it speaks to what they're doing on the offensive end, but it also, his supporting cast is just really helping him out this year. And on that Rink Mast, I'm sorry, you wanted to talk about Tominaga, but Rink Mast, this Dutch destroyer that they got in from Bradley, this guy, he's averaging a 14-point double-double right now. He has brought something to that front court that I didn't think they had last year. And, that and in tandem with just I think they're working like 3 forwards right now that are really, really just taking care of business down low, allowing Tominaga to lurk on the outside and take full advantage of his opportunities. But it's him and then Juwan Gary coming off the bench. Juwan Gary is making his case for 6th man of the year for sure. I think he has yet to crack the starting lineup, but it's crazy. He's leading the team, I believe, in points per game right now, and it's just offering something that this Nebraska team has not had. And I mean, while I wouldn't be afraid of an undefeated Nebraska team with just the competition they've played so far, I think this season might be a little different for him.
Yeah, Fred Hoiberg has certainly put a team together here. Not just have a few good players playing well, but as you said, Tominaga's supporting cast as well is really coming through and giving him some more support. And just the way they play together, the way the offense is flowing now. They haven't played the best schedule in the world. They've not upset a Kentucky or something like that. They'll have their chance against Creighton. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second, but overall, I've been very impressed with this team. Like you said, rank masked, Juwan Gary scoring a lot of points. Frank, what's kind of been your thoughts on Tominaga and just kind of Nebraska as a whole so far this season?
Yeah, I mean, to kind of echo here what Burke said, I mean, I think everyone thought it was going to be the Tominaga show, yeah, and it hasn't been the case at all. And that being said, like he's still on fire. I mean, especially when you look at his numbers, he's still shooting 40% from three. But really, what's impressed me the most about him this season is he's getting to the line a lot more. Right, last season we saw him at 17% free throw rate. That's up to 36.2 this season. So we're seeing him looking to score in other ways and really getting to the basket, drawing those fouls and making teams pay when they really try to close out on them. So, I mean, I just think he's kind of taken that leap in other ways, not necessarily from a role aspect, but he's really improved as a player. And I think that has a lot to do with his experience over the summer in the FIBA games as well. But he is, I mean, like, how do you dislike the guy, right? He's a fan favorite, but I don't think, anyone, expected what we've seen from Juwan Gary so far. And you're right, their best win is only over Duquesne, but I like this Nebraska team. They are fun and they're undefeated, and you can't argue with that.
You're right. I think that's a great way to put it. Like they're just a fun team to watch. They play well together. They're always rooting for each other. Tominaga is a star that is shooting really well and fun to watch. I just think it's been his aggression this year. The way he's been aggressive, like you said, to get to the basket, not afraid to get to the free throw line, do those kind of things, and really taking his shot and owning his shot as well. I'm not saying he's taking bad shots or things that he shouldn't take, but it just feels like he is in more command of his game, really operating the way he wants to play and not, kind of like the new guy playing that, is looking for a spot on the team. So Creighton is coming up, right? Creighton, number 15 team. They've had a good season so far. I think they have one loss.
They lost to Colorado State.
Colorado State, that's right. So not a great loss for them, but they did beat Iowa earlier this season, 5-1, number one in the Big East in terms of wins and things like that. So it's been an overall good season for them. I don't know how much of a win on the resume they're going to be at the end of the season, but right now they're ranked 15th. Burke, what are your thoughts going into this game versus the Blue Jays?
I mean, I think Creighton's great. They're going to live and die with how their shots fall. But, I mean, they can make them at an incredible clip. That Colorado State team, I think by the end of the season, we're going to look back, and I think they're really going to build something. Yeah, I think this is going to be an absolute battle. It is. It's their first true test, and it's going to be interesting to see. I don't know if – I mean, it is a three-man rotation that the Huskers are operating with in the front court. So if Creighton can somehow get them in foul trouble – we'll see what this Cornhusker team is made of. But yeah, as far as who I think is going to win, I would bet on Creighton, but you can't count out the Huskers. They're undefeated right now. We're going into December, they're undefeated.
Yeah, I mean, make it through November and you're undefeated, even if you're not playing, quote unquote, the best schedule ever. That's still impressive for just about any team to play through. Frank, what are some of your thoughts going into this one?
Yeah, I mean, we saw Nebraska, go on the road and take down Creighton, last year, and I want to, I don't think the Colorado State loss is that bad. They're currently ranked 29th in KenPom, and they're currently top 40 in both offense and defense in KenPom. So, they don't have a signature win yet, outside of Creighton, but we're time will tell if that was an outlier or if that wasn't. But ultimately, Burke, as you said, it really comes down to Creighton's shot. They're going to live or die by the three. And that's ultimately what went wrong for them in that Colorado State game. So they actually lead the country. They're number one in the country in percent of points from three, and they're third in 3-point attempt rate. So this is a team that's going to live or die by the three. The only question is, in that front court, who do they have that's going to handle Ryan Kalkbrenner? And I think it's going to be by committee. But we saw him do it last year. Granted, this is a very different Creighton team. They lost some key pieces, but right now, KenPom predicts a 1-point win for Creighton. So I think this game's going to be a lot closer. Nebraska does have the home advantage. They have the hype right now. I imagine fans are going to show out for that one. I think there's a pretty good chance we see the Huskers beat Creighton.
Damn. Hey, before we continue, just credit Frank for bringing the numbers today.
Frank's always
I'm a
got the
numbers
numbers
guy.
ready for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think, you look at Colorado State, and you make a good point. They're higher up there than in KenPom than people might think. I think the Creighton Blue Jays, they really relied on Kalkbrenner a lot last year. There was some kind of crazy stats on like their point differential without Kalkbrenner than with him. I forget exactly what it was, but it was something crazy last year. Well, Kalkbrenner was obviously just the guy they needed, but I don't think they're quite that team as much this season to where they're relying on Kalkbrenner offensively and defensively as much. They still rely on him a lot, and like you pointed out, Frank, they are a very 3-point heavy team. They only scored 48 points against Colorado State in that game. That's not what you're going to see after scoring over 80, almost over 90 in every other game. To score 48 points, that's just unreal to go from that average down to that. So it's an interesting one. We'll see how it goes. I personally like the Cornhuskers a lot. I don't think they're fake. I don't think they're fool's gold. I think that this team is a better team than maybe we gave them credit for in the preseason. And I think that they might be able to shock some people and shock the Blue Jays coming up here soon as well. Any final thoughts about the Cornhuskers in Creighton or any other players on Nebraska, guys?
I just think as a whole, the Big Ten needs this win. So go Huskers.
Yeah. For sure. And the Big Ten has got some really good wins lately because Purdue wins the Maui Invitational. Just a crazy Maui Invitational as well. I mean, you look at the names of the teams who were in here. You look at the names of the coaches. The names of these aren't just like teams that have good numbers next to their names. These are real coaches coaching really good teams. And Matt Painter showed that, hey, this team can go in and they can win a tournament and they can play well in a tournament, and that's got to be really, really good news for the Boilermakers. I mean, we're talking about beating Shaka Smart. We're talking about beating Gonzaga. We're talking about beating some really good players, Tyler Kolek. I mean, these are really, really good teams that they were able to take down. I don't know if Gonzaga is as good as they normally are, but I don't want to disparage them at all because you look at Gonzaga every single year, and they're still up there. Frank, tell me about the Boilermakers. What was it in this tournament that really put them over the top?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of what went right, I felt that Purdue came to play defensively. Now, Matt Painter would disagree with me on that. I know he's been pretty critical of the team's defensive performance, but really that's been the big surprise this season has been Purdue's defensive effort. I think they're currently 4th or 5th in KenPom. It bounces all over the place. I've been following it all season, but yeah, I think really, defensively we force teams to kind of play our brand of basketball, which is kind of what we saw Marquette do against Kansas. And I think that, Purdue to go through and win this, and still have turnover issues, still struggle from the free throw line is just a testament to how good this team can actually be when they're playing their best basketball, which I think they were far from that in the Maui Invitational. But yeah, three really exciting games. Got my heart rate up quite a bit, especially that last one, to see Marquette make that comeback that they did. But just a great, tournament out there in Hawaii, and really happy to see the Boilermakers take the win for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think you saw a little bit of everything you wanted to see from this Boilermaker team. You saw Fletcher Lawyer come out and have a really good game, 27 points against Tennessee. He was kind of struggling. I was joking with Russ last podcast that I was like, should Fletcher Lawyer be starting? And then that same night, he scores 27 points. So it's like, yeah, he should be starting.
Well, that was the entire Purdue fan base seemingly too. That
exactly.
was criticizing his starting position for sure.
Exactly. He took a little bit slower to get started, but in addition to that, you saw Marquette come back and Purdue fight back and get a close win as well. So it's not like they just blew every team out and didn't have anything close. I mean, I think you saw a little bit of everything you wanted to see from this Boilermakers team in the Maui Invitational. That's got to feel really, really good for Boilermaker fans. Burke, I know it's going to be hard for you to say good things about Purdue, but we made Russ say good things about Indiana last podcast. So I think you can muster something up, right?
It's hard to say it, but it's easy to see it. Like, it's Zach Edey is just tall. It's not a thing. It may have been during the Ivy year. It truly may have been, but that it's no longer the case. This sucks. This is painful to say, guys. I'm like, truly, this is painful. But he's just playing with this mean ass nature, and it's pairs so well with this ludicrous stature. It's just far more competitive than we've seen him. And that's something crazy to say about somebody who's already the national reigning player of the year. I mean, everybody would kill to have this guy on their team. And then Braden Smith, I am getting sick talking about this, but Braden Smith, he's taken the leap forward that everyone had said he would. He still turns the ball over quite a bit, but with his ability, I mean, he's making passes and getting assists with just far more confidence than we saw all last season. And it's an absolute gem of a guard that Matt Painter was able to find under the radar, under the nose of just the entire country. And listen, my level of animosity for him can pretty well correlate with just the value of his play. And I have a feeling I'm just going to hate him more and more and more. And, but like, there has to be a ceiling there for like the sake of Hoosier psyches everywhere. There has to be a ceiling there. So, I mean, I hope to God we are seeing that ceiling right now, but he's just bringing it. And then the worst part of all of this, sorry. So what?
I just had a quick question. I remember, 2 or 3 months ago, you had said that you were sick of hearing that Braden Smith has taken the next step.
Frank does not forget. He's got receipts.
Has he, in your opinion?
It's undeniable what he's doing, and that it sickens me to see, sickens me to talk about. But this has to be it, right? Like, which is crazy to say about a sophomore, but this has to be the ceiling. I need it to be the ceiling. And then the worst part of this whole Purdue team this year, which is probably the best part in Frank's eyes, the worst part is this is just the most fleshed out squad that they've had in my recent memory. Kaufman Wren, Miles Colvin, Lance Jones, and having their starting forward from last season come off the bench, like they look like a juggernaut this season. It's crippling to my spirit, but they look damn good. And if there isn't a leap in the play of some other Big Ten team right now, they're going to run away with it. And that truly pains me to say.
Props to you for being able to get through that, Burke. I know that wasn't easy for you, and if any of your fans are listening, they probably are
guys, I'm sorry. Right now. I'm sorry, but
no, I think, Braden Smith, to me, the thing I was looking at this year more than anything else was the turnovers. And early on in the season, before the Maui Invitational, I wasn't really ecstatic about some of the turnovers he had. I didn't feel like he had improved greatly in that area, but he is fouling less this season. He's getting more steals. His assists are up almost by 2 more assists per game. The rebounds are still are up as well. So, even though I think that the turnover have not been as good of an improvement as I would have hoped. He's doing all the little things you want your point guard to do. He's shooting 50% from 3-point. I think he's shooting the same percentage from 3-pointers as he is from free throws, which that's just kind of funny. But his rebounds are up, his assists are up. He's just doing all the things you need your point guard to do. So if he can just get those turnovers down, which it's hard to critique him because he's just playing so doggone well. But his points are up. I mean, this guy is doing everything you wanted him to do in the offseason. Just about everything you wanted him to improve at in the offseason to really take this team to the next step of where they need to be. Frank, you have any thoughts on Braden Smith and his improvement?
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing for me this season is him looking to score more.
Yeah.
And so there was kind of a long game going on with Painter in that, the first several games, even going back to the exhibition games, that they were setting high ball screens for Braden. And if the defense didn't switch, if they dropped or went under, he was shooting. Right. And so the first team that we saw who actually respected that was Marquette, who actually switched and were, creating mismatches down low with Edey and forcing him to double. Now, granted, Edey had 5 turnovers passing out of those, but I think he's kind of established himself as an offensive threat where he was a guy where, if he was open, he was going to shoot. But now you see him looking for his own shot. And I don't think anyone expected that. Mm-hmm. And yes, his turnover numbers haven't improved like we hoped, but, his assist percentage is up 15% from last season, right, which is really encouraging to see. And, it's something that even happens at the pro level too, that, the best passers often have the most turnovers as well. So, that might just be something we have to live with, from the fan perspective. But yeah, I couldn't be happier with Braden, and I hope this isn't his ceiling. I hope he continues to grow, but we'll see what happens.
Well, and less than 3 turnovers per game is not bad. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like he's bad with his turnovers. He's not. He hasn't had less than 2 all season. But like I said, that's not bad. It's just not the improvement that maybe people wanted to see. But you're exactly right. If you're going to be passing as much as he is, those turnovers are naturally going to come just because you're passing so much. I was really impressed with him against Marquette. 4 for 6 from behind the 3-point line, 18 points. I think you were right, Frank. They were really hunting him a little bit more to make sure he wouldn't shoot, and he still looked for a shot. He still got there. He didn't rely all on Evie like sometimes we saw him do a little bit last year, which I can't really blame him for. You got a 7'4" guy that's in the paint. If I was stressed out, I'd probably just pass to him as well. But yeah, I think the development of Braden Smith is what this team needed to kind of be this team that can go out and win tournaments and do those kind of things. So it's going to be really, really interesting.
It's made like they always had that A option last season.
Yeah.
But it's made their B, C, and D options so much more apparent and like just damaging to any opponent they're going to face. And yeah, the Big Ten has to figure something out to stop these guys.
Well, I think one thing that's different is the addition of Lance Jones right now too,
yes.
And that last season Purdue did not have an equivalent, and I think Lance Jones is probably the most athletic guard we've had since Jaden Ivey. And we've had good guards. I just think he's up there in athleticism. So we really didn't have someone who could just kick it into extra gear and get to the basket like he can really get back in transition and make shots difficult for other guys. So I think that's what makes this Purdue team a little bit different is A, the depth piece, and B, the addition of Lance Jones.
I agree. Yeah, I like the guys around the team as well. Colvin as well. He didn't score any points against Tennessee and Marquette, but early on in the season, he was kind of picking up for Fletcher Lawyer. I think he was the guy that people were kind of vying to start over Fletcher Lawyer, weren't they, Frank? Yeah. So, I think he's a good player. I don't know if he's going to be scoring you 10 points every single game, but he's definitely there when you need it. So that's a good option to have. All right, let's move on to Ohio State. Ohio State wins the Emerald Coast Classic, beating Alabama. Santa Clara they beat as well. Not as well known of a team, but they were undefeated. They did beat Oregon to get to the championship to play Ohio State. So that was a good performance from the Buckeyes to beat them. And the Buckeyes are kind of rolling, guys. We weren't really sure too much what to expect after their A&M loss at home early in the season. I think it was their second game. But Bruce Thornton, guys, 17.2 points per game. Roddy Gale, 15 points per game. I mean, when you got two guards that together are averaging 3.3 turnovers per game and they're scoring over 30 points per game together, that is really, really difficult to stop. Burke, what do you think about the Emerald Classic and these Ohio State Buckeyes?
Last time I was on this show, I was who was it with us? Adam Judy, was that his last name?
Yeah,
Jardy. Yeah, I had brought up the fact that Ohio State up to that point looked like it was going to be another sensible NBA audition tape, but this time for Thornton.
Right.
And then he said, no, it's been made clear that that Holtman's going to have these guys much more consciously share this ball. And immediately right after we had that discussion, it seems to be the case.
Yep.
They're distributing it far better. I mean, that has created opportunities for Jamison Battle to do damage from beyond the arc. Like he's just a great lurker on the perimeter. And it has taken a while, but I think Felix Okpara is starting to find that sophomore bump.
It's really that defensive anchor they need down there,
Yeah, but even more than that, like we were talking so highly of Juwan Gary coming off the bench. Like Zed Key is absolutely a sixth man that is making his presence known for like sixth man of the year.
Yeah,
running.
Yeah, he is for sure. I wasn't too sure about the Zed Key coming off the bench decision by Holtman, but it's really paying off. I think Okpara is that defensive, anchor you need to start the game, and he really brings that energy to really help them out. So, and Evan Mahaffey has been the surprise this season. He's not doing a ton, 3.5 points per game, 3.3 rebounds. So he's not like he's putting up gaudy stat numbers or anything like that, but he's a presence on the defensive end, and he has a lot of energy, and his length is crazy. I don't have his exact measurements in front of me, but he's just a really, really long guy who can make things happen and guard multiple positions, which is really impressive and something they need. Frank, what are your thoughts on the Buckeyes and the Emerald Classic and just overall as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, just starting on the team as a whole, I think a lot of people thought this was going to be the Jamison Battle show, is going to be his team. And, no one really saw the Thornton and Gale, barrage that we've seen so far. I mean, just to, look at their numbers against Alabama, Thornton goes for 29, 4 for 6 from 3, 13 for 14 at the line. Roddy Gale goes for 23 against a really good Alabama team. I mean, that's impressive. And these guys are sophomores too. I mean, that's the crazy thing. And yeah, I mean, Zedke, he's had a rough go of it in his career. He's battled injuries, but he's doing the intangibles, right? He's doing the little things. He's rebounding hard. He's defending hard. Same with Akpara. I mean, I'm really excited to see what this team does going forward and how they carry that momentum from Alabama. I mean, and Santa Clara beat Oregon. I mean, that was still, a Ken Palm top 120 win for them. Yeah, I mean, Texas A&M, that's not a bad loss for this Buckeye team, and I think that they actually got better from it. Yeah. I mean, and I'm really excited to watch these two guards going forward. And it's feel like they were guys that really weren't talked about preseason as much as what you would have think, especially compared to the output we've seen from them so far. But yeah, they're looking like two of the best guards in the conference right now.
Well, and I think it's helped having Dale Bonner come off the bench as well. I mean, this was a guy at Baylor that he did not get his praises sung enough for what he was able to do at Baylor. And I'm learning from listening to some guys on the beat who kind of hear a little bit more about the games and the team. Dale Bonner is just exactly what you want in a teammate in the locker room. I mean, he's pumping those guys up. He's the positive influence you need, but he's also one of those guys that just gets on guys. He's not afraid, even if he's only playing, 15, 20 minutes per game. He's not afraid to get on guys. He's not afraid to be that senior leader. And I think that was something that Ohio State lacked last year. I don't think anybody was getting on Bryce Sensabaugh. I don't think anybody was getting on the defense and saying, guys, we have to lock down when our shots don't go in on the other end. And it really feels like Ohio State has that this year with their leadership and what they're able to do. So really, really good things for the Buckeyes so far. I'm impressed. I think that things are going to keep going well for them. And I'm right there with you, Frank. That A&M loss, I think, did a whole lot more good for them as a team than maybe it would have, been a good W on the schedule. So any more thoughts on Ohio State before we end up with them, guys? Nope. All right, let's get to Penn State. This one's going to be a little bit more depressing because Penn State, they started so well. They started 4-0. They were up there with Nebraska. They lost to, who was their first game? They lost to Texas A&M. We were just talking about them. Lost to Texas A&M first in the tournament. Then they lost to Baylor. And then Mike Rhodes' old team, VCU, he loses to them the final game of the tournament. Frank, you've seen Penn State a little bit this year. And what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it's, they're trying to find their new identity. And with as many, new pieces that they have, I mean, granted, some of these guys came over from VCU with Mike Rhodes, but, ultimately, he's had his defensive prominence, right? I mean, VCU was 15th in defense last season, 7th in adjusted defense 2 seasons ago, 14th 3 seasons ago. But, we're starting to see that trickle in. They're forcing a lot of turnovers. But ultimately, it's how do these pieces fit together? So, yeah, they started 4-0, but none of those were against great teams. Their best win was coming over Morehead State. Texas A&M, not an embarrassing loss like we just talked about. Right. Butler, okay, that's an acceptable. Like we can deal with that. But VCU, that's kind of where, in terms of a ranking standpoint, you want a Big Ten team to win that game. But they're a team that's not shot the ball well from 3, but they're taking a lot of threes as well. Anytime you have, a coaching turnover, you have so many new pieces, it's just going to take some time to get things, up and running. I think come mid-season, this team's going to have things figured out, especially on the defensive end. They're currently 105th in KenPom, and that's just not what we see from Mike Rhodes. So I think that, given his experience, given his, prominence on the defensive end, we're going to see a much better product defensively and probably offensively from this team.
Yeah, I think the defense is there. My concern is the rebounding out there. They don't have a single guy averaging more than 10 rebounds per game, and they only have one guy averaging more than 5 rebounds per game. So when you have nobody averaging over 10. You'd like to see those rebounds distributed a little bit more. But unfortunately, they're just not getting the rebounds like they need to. So they are playing good defense, but I think they were kind of exposed against some better teams like Butler, A&M, and VCU to a certain extent, being able to rebound off of them. Burke, what are your thoughts?
I mean, last place in an 8-team tournament, that is beyond a rough outing. Especially when you end it on the team you used to coach.
Right.
Like that is so gutting. And it's last season they had a fun run in the Big Ten, but like Frank was talking, it's a whole new identity to the squad. And you had initially thought, and I'm sure Penn State fans were like, man, we are gonna miss Jalen Pickett and the booty ball offense. But the most glaring thing to me has been just the drop in shooting that the absence of Seth Lundy and Andrew Funk has left. Like those guys were incredible from beyond the arc last season, and they are desperately missed on this squad.
Yeah, I mean, Jameel Brown is the only one shooting over, well, I guess Dunn is shooting 40%, but the only one shooting over 40% from three on this team, and I don't even think he's taken all that many threes. So, definitely.
It's Lions lurking in the tall grass on the perimeter. It just doesn't scare you like it did last year.
Yeah. Yeah, I unfortunately, I'm a little concerned. I think you're right, Frank. I think by midseason, they'll really find themselves together. Unfortunately, the Big Ten, it's such a you can lose any night type of conference that even when they do start to get it together, there's not going to be any teams on the schedule. Maybe Minnesota. I know they lost to San Francisco, but San Francisco is generally an okay team. I don't put a ton of anything bad on that, but still, I mean, Minnesota might be your only one, and even them, I feel like, are a little bit better than maybe some people give them credit for. But just things not looking great right now for Penn State. If there are any positives, if there's anything good to look at, do we have anything, Frank?
Yeah, I mean, really, the addition of Wahab, I think has been fantastic. I mean, 134.5 offensive rating on the season so far. He's the one in there making the hustle plays. He's rebounding hard. He's playing really good defensively. And he's experienced. This is the third team he's played for. It was a great transfer in from Georgetown. And, unfortunately, none of the guys brought in from VCU have really materialized offensively yet. Like I said, it's still a young season, but the emerging guy obviously as well is Kanye Clary, who's played really well. It's not shooting the ball fantastic, but in terms of the overall scoring efficiency, 105 offensive rating, and he's the most used player. Be really curious to see what happens. He's a little undersized for the Big Ten, but I think there's a little bit of Braden Smith in him, and he's got a little bit of moxie to his game. So I'll be really curious to see how he continues to develop as a player.
And that's what we're used to seeing from these Penn State teams. We're used to seeing moxie. Used to seeing guys who play hard and do kind of the little things that you need them to do. Ace Baldwin certainly does that. I don't know if he would be considered doing as well as he did at VCU. He's definitely making an impact, 14 points a game. He is only averaging 2 turnovers a game. He's kind of leading this team on offense in some ways, but you're right, Clary's kind of leading the points there. 16.7 points per game, so he's their leading scorer. But I think you're right. I think that they can rely on Wahab doing those kind of little things, making those things happen. Burke, you have any final thoughts on Penn State before we get out of here?
Nope. I'm good.
All right. Before we move on to our next game, I do want to remind you about CBB Analytics. CBBAnalytics.com is where you can find all cough in the middle of the ad read. You can find all of your college basketball analytics needs. They're a great resource for me. I love just going on there, searching through things, figuring stuff out. Helps me do my show prep. Really appreciate them, what they do. They give me a free pro tier just so that way I can tell you about it. And their free content is great as well. So even if you're not paying for it, you can still get really good content just by the free stuff over there. So go check them out, CBB Analytics. They do great stuff. Check them out. All right, Burke, we're going to talk about your team. Indiana wins 89-76. Was kind of close there in the first half.
They were winning. Yeah.
Yeah. But Indiana pulled it out. I don't know if I ever thought Harvard was going to win, but it definitely didn't look good. What were your thoughts on this one, Burke?
My thoughts are that we need to immediately get that freshman point guard that Harvard had. That kid, Malik Mack, that dude is a bucket. Yeah. And really, the Hoosiers did put it together in the second half. They really did. Our front court was dominant, and Mackenzie Mbako finally had the game that we've all been hoping for. I mean, as Hoosier fans, we are very quick to just put all faith and all trust in these freshmen.
Right.
But man, if this team is going to be doing anything of prominence it come March, Mackenzie needs to find his game, and that starts on the defensive end. He has been a defensive negative throughout the entire start of this first 6 games, but it seems like he came out with an effort in this game, to a real conscious effort to get involved on that end, and it turned into just offensive productivity that we hadn't seen from him, that we desperately need from him, that we desperately we're going to rely on at the start of the season. And then just as far as what there is to love about this team, like Malik Renew has taken his game to another level. He really has. Like, if you're talking sophomore bumps, that guy's right up there with the best of them. He's been a very reliable force, but the single most reliable force on this team has been Kalel Ware, who is bringing it game in and game out when his motor was the question we all had at the front of our minds going into this season. It's crazy how he's been answering the call, and it is in juxtaposition to that, it is alarming how our veteran guards haven't. The perimeter defense is on them, and defense has been like the baseline of Mike Woodson's entire tenure at Indiana. And if we don't have that, we have nothing to build upon. It's been troubling watching the lack of cohesion that you right, for better or worse, you kind of blame that on the veteran captains of this team.
Well, Gabe Cupps has come in and he has been all defense. You know, obviously he plays well on offense as well, but man, that guy, when he gets in there, he's just an energy bunny for your defense that you need. And to me, it's kind of surprising that you're not getting that from a Trey Galloway. You know, I know Xavier Johnson, he's always energetic, but I would think coming in, being this, you know, come back, what is he, a 5th-year senior or something like that? Sixth-year senior.
He is damn near a doctor of basketball. Like, he can't afford to be doing this. It's killing us.
Right. You would think he would come in and be kind of that defensive presence. But, you know, the thing I noticed the most in the first half talking about was when he went down with 4 minutes left or something like that in the first half. The team, not to say they looked lost, but they didn't seem to be playing as well after he went down. That's when Harvard got the lead and it started to extend it a little bit more. But I don't know. I don't know if this team is better or worse without Xavier Johnson, but I feel like they need Xavier Johnson. So hopefully he can come back from that injury soon.
What this team needs most is confidence in their shooting. Like Trey Galloway, you're watching this team take shots, and his confidence in his own shot just deflates anybody watching the game. Like, I love Trey Galloway's game. He attacks the rim hard as hell. He has confidence when he's attacking the rim. But it's a trait that Jalen Hood-Schifino embodied. Like, Jalen Hood-Schifino could miss 53-point shots, but he took every shot like the next 75 were going right in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like Trey shot 47% from beyond the arc last year. Like, if that doesn't warrant some confidence in you, I don't know what would. And it is troubling that the biggest question is the presence that we thought we were going to be able to rely on this season.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely looked for more from Trey. I think he's got it there. I just think he needs to put it all together. Frank, because Burke said some nice things about Purdue, you do need to find one nice thing to say.
At least one. Come on.
Oh, I've got some nice things for sure. Well, one thing I'll say is that, you know, throughout Xavier Johnson's tenure at Indiana, he has been so highly regarded by the fan base, and I've never understood why, but I see it now. I do. I saw against Army, like, he was the guy who, I want to say, rallied the troops against Army, but he got the team going. Like, he was commanding the floor. Like, he has the intangibles, and he has a certain presence about him where you listen to what he says. Like, and you're right, he has a PhD in basketball at this point. Why shouldn't you? But you know, Mackenzie Mbako, I mean, he's kind of been a bit of a letdown offensively, and I think the the view of him has kind of shifted from, this is the guy that's going to get us, to a championship, to a Final Four, to like, well, now he has to develop. But yeah, I mean, defensively, he has struggled. You can, it's not hard to look on Twitter and see all sorts of breakdowns of him getting lost and, missing his man. But man, like Khalil Ware has been awesome. He terrifies me. Like, he really terrifies me as someone who could actually give Zach Edey some problems. Like, he's scary. I mean, he's shooting the ball well. He's not shooting a ton, but he's 4 for 8 from 3. He's getting to the line a lot. He's blocking balls like crazy. I mean, I did not expect that from him. And I also didn't expect the leap from Renew. And I mean, from the fan base as a whole, is that a surprise to you all?
We were all expecting a leap, but we didn't know that it was going to be this substantial right out of the gate. Like, he really, the weight he put on this offseason was a large amount, and he desperately needed it, but he is utilizing it with a physicality that he didn't have at all last season. I mean, his footwork is natural to him. It's the best facet of his game is his ability to dance down low. But now that he's able to kind of throw some weight around while he's doing that, he has just been exploiting some front courts.
And what I think Indiana's missing right now, just in my opinion, is someone like Miller Kopp, right? Someone who just has a ton of gravity and who keeps defenses sucked to that corner, right? Because I think about, the Purdue Indiana game at Assembly Hall last season. I mean, he lit us up because we would just help a little too much in the paint, and boom, there he was, right? And so Trey Galloway hasn't proven to be that guy this season. And ultimately, like, someone has to step up and be that 3-point threat. Like, well, if you give him a foot of space, he's going to hit the shot. And ultimately, that's what this offense needs, I think, in order to click completely. But you're right. I mean, Mike Woodson has made a living so far at Indiana on the defensive end, and this just isn't what we expect from an Indiana team. But in your opinion, what do they need to turn it around? Is it just practice? Is it scheme? What do you see there?
It's buying into. It's just buying in. Like, they definitely brought an effort. Well, McKenzie in particular. Like, he brought an effort into the Harvard game that we hadn't seen all season, and it turned into his most prosperous night. He had 18 points in that game. Mm-hmm. And like, he is able to shoot that 3, and we need him to be that outside force that is going to draw some people from the interior, where Khalil and Malik they could be one of the most dominant. They could be the most dominant. Zach Edey. He's the most dominant player in the front court. But as far as a tandem go, they could be one of the most feared in this conference. But it will take clearing it out a bit. Like, we can't have all that traffic down low. And that could be Trey as well. Like, I still have faith that Trey will find these shots. Like, he can't keep shooting at the rate he is. But until he buys into his own game, you just don't see the end of it right now.
Well, and I have concerns about McKenzie and Mbako, but he did answer those somewhat against Harvard with the 18 points, like you said. But still, he only went 1 for 5 from 3 points. I got to be honest. I really feel like he's more of a 4. 6'8", 217. He's a little bit undersized for that. In college, that's an okay size. But at the next level, that really won't be a great size in the NBA for that. But I tell you, I don't like his perimeter game enough for him to be a consistent 3. I think he can play the 3, but I'd really like to see him more at the 4 more often. And I think that's kind of why you're seeing a bit more of the jumbled, paint area and stuff. That's why you see Khalil Ware having to come out and shoot the 3 a little bit more, which thankfully he's good at. Like you said, 4 for 8. That's really good for a 7-footer to be able to shoot like that. But looking at it, I think McKenzie Mbako needs to find his place on this offense a little bit more. And I really feel like once he starts hitting these 3s, it's going to not only help him, confidence-wise, but it's going to help him, moving around the offense more and helping some of those things. Am I off base there? What do you think, Burke?
No, I mean, part of that was him finding his place in the offensive, like, down low on the boards. He had 8 rebounds. Yeah, him and Khalil tied game-high rebounds in that game.
Right.
And it really was just a effort that he brought that he hadn't previously. And it's like, that's the most frustrating thing about this team this season. It's how do you not bring that? Like, that effort can make up for, it's so cliche, but it can make up for so much.
Right.
And yeah, you just can't afford not to bring it.
My in-laws have season tickets to IU, and they actually got to sit courtside for the Army game. And it was interesting because they came back and told us that, when you're courtside, you hear everything. I don't know if you guys have ever sat courtside before, but you hear everything when you're courtside. And they were surprised how much Mike Woodson was getting into Mackenzie Mbako and Xavier Johnson and Khalil Ware. I mean, like my mother-in-law said, I don't think I would ever say what he was saying to them to my own children.
Hey, yeah, we need it. We need it. But I mean, that's what he preached, that he was going to put on Khalil the whole time. He was like,
Right.
"Hey, I'm going to tell you how it is." And Khalil's game is speaking for itself in that regard.
Right, and I think that's what you need. I mean, Khalil Ware, he leads the team in almost every category. I think assists is the only one that he doesn't lead it in. But 17 points per game, 9 rebounds per game, a steal, 1.7 blocks. I mean, he is the engine that's making this team run right now. So maybe that hard coaching is just exactly what he needed. So
Yeah.
all right, let's move on to
Hey, before we go on, I still believe that this team's best ball lies ahead of them. I want to make that abundantly clear.
I agree.
Once this team can figure it out, like we have all the talent to be a threat. And here's hoping that this Maryland game can be the start of something great.
And I will say, I like the way Mike Woodson is coaching this team because, I've been to one game and I've watched, all their games on TV, and there are just certain times where, like, the offense is not going well or the defense is not going well, and Mike Woodson doesn't sell him out. He leaves him out there, and he's like, figure it out. If you're going to lose to Harvard, you're going to lose to Harvard. Figure it out,
Well, part of the toughest stretches of our play has been him doing this platoon system subbing, which it just doesn't allow for a continuous rhythm in the game at all. And you almost hope that he took these non-conference lesser opponents as an opportunity to see who he will be able to use when he trims it to like 8 players.
Yeah.
But it's been tough when he does that platoon swap.
He's playing almost 10 or 11 guys per game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because CJ Gunn, Gabe Cups, they're all getting time. Which CJ Gunn, he needs to step it up a little bit if he wants to find himself in that rotation. So, all right, let's move on to Michigan. They go 1-2 in the battle for Atlantis. A little bit of a hard time for Michigan here. They were able to defeat Stanford, but they lost to Memphis. They lost to Texas Tech. Not really a super close game against Texas Tech. Michigan started really well. Doug McDaniel was having a good time. Phil Martelli is still coaching this team. I kind of feel like I like Phil Martelli coaching a little bit more than I do Juwan Howard. I don't know, but we do hope that Juwan Howard gets back soon. Frank, what were some of your thoughts on Michigan in this tournament?
Yeah, I mean, the loss to Memphis is by no means a bad loss, but I think, the really big surprise was not necessarily the loss to Texas Tech, but the dominance from Texas Tech. And like, what you're going to get when you play Texas Tech. You're going to get the no middle scheme. They're going to force you baseline. They're going to ice every ball screen. And Michigan just didn't have a ton of an answer for that. I feel like they overperformed early on. Doug McDaniel hit some shots. But like ultimately, I was really surprised to see that. And again, this is a team who's, lost, they lost Jet Howard. They lost Hunter Dickinson, who a lot of their offense flowed through. They kind of used him as a DHO hub. I mean, and so they're still trying to figure out their identity. And it's something that every team goes through when they lose such an integral piece like that. But, it's shifting into the Doug McDaniel show in Michigan, and they're still trying to figure out, how that all fits together. But one guy who I really like has been Taurus Reed. I feel like they need to get him involved even more than he has been. Because he looks the part. He's big. He's physical. He brings an element that I don't feel like is matched by anyone else on this team. And I feel like he can kind of step in there and take some of that, that Hunter Dickinson dribble handoff action that we saw them run a lot of with him, and kind of take some of that role over. But ultimately, this team has a lot of talent. They're stacked from top to bottom. I don't expect this to be the norm for them this season. And I, with how they're shooting the ball, currently ranked 45th in the country in 3-point shooting, I expect to see them turn things around. I know I've said that a lot tonight, but I really do have high hopes for a lot of these Big Ten teams right now.
That's sometimes how it goes with the Big Ten teams. Is they struggle a little bit in the out of conference, and then they get into the conference play, and it's like they just figure each other out so much better. And I think sometimes it's the consistency of the coaches, that knowing each other pretty well, those kind of things. But all I will say about Michigan is I hope for them and I say this as a Buckeye, so I'm being nice to you here, Michigan fans. I hope for them that it does not turn into the Doug McDaniel show, because he is electric. He is a really good offensive player. I think he's okay on defense too. He's not awful. 1.3 steals. He's doing a good job there, but if they're not careful, if the season does start to get away from them, it could just turn into the Doug McDaniel show. And after seeing the Bryce Sensabaugh show last year, I don't think you want that to happen. Burke, what are your thoughts on Michigan?
I initially out of the gate, I drank the Kool-Aid after their crazy start. I really did. Like I still believe Doug McDaniel is like a top 3 or 4 point guard in this conference, and I mean, he's just the type of point guard that you would love to have in your college basketball program. It's a guard bringing all that isn't going to get a sniff from the NBA. Mm-hmm. Like what's more valuable than that right now? And it's just this performance really just made you think about all their wins up to here. Like it's just a realization that this St. John's team might not be what the national media prompted it up to be to start the season. And then they beat Stanford, but that is a Stanford team that lost to that Santa Clara team by 12 points. Mm-hmm. And I mean, Frank, you said that everything that this Santa Clara team has this year, they're Ken Pom and that, but we saw the Buckeyes just run them off the floor. And I know it isn't transitive property. It isn't a sure thing here in college basketball, but this should be a wake-up call to the Wolverines, who had to be feeling high going into this one.
Yeah, I mean they had a reason to feel high too. I mean, nearly 90 points per game in their first 3 games. I mean, they completely shut down St. John's. Their defense just wasn't, and it was at St. John's too. I mean, that's a Rick Pitino team. Rick Pitino, even though it is a new team, they're well-coached teams, and so you shut that down. You deserve credit for that, but the loss to Long Beach after that, just couldn't play any defense, allowing Long Beach State to score 94 on you. I just think that Michigan has to take a look in the mirror and say, are we going to play enough defense to help ourselves and to help our offense out to win these games that we need to win? Because they're going to upset a few teams in the Big Ten just by offensive alone. It's going to happen at some point. But if they can really figure out that defense, they'll be more consistent with who they need to be. So
Olivier Nkamhoua has been impressive since he's entered, and that is something to build on for them.
I think him and Doug McDaniel are like the highest forward guard duo points combined duo in the Big Ten. They're like scoring 36 points a game together or something like that, which is just wild. Yeah, so he definitely deserves credit as well. All right, let's take a look at Iowa. This is our last one we're going to look at, and then I do want to talk a little bit about just the Iowa team and who they are this season. They gave Creighton a good game, took them down. Creighton eventually won by 8, but in this tournament they did split it 1-for-1. They lost to Oklahoma, but they did beat Seton Hall. So I think there's some good things. I think there's some bad things, a little bit of everything to look at here with this Iowa team. But I think also this is just kind of a Fran McCaffrey team. I don't know if they're doing anything super different from what they normally are. They got good freshmen, so the future's bright. Frank, what are your thoughts on the Iowa Hawkeyes?
Yeah, I think you said it when you said this is a typical Fran McCaffrey team, right? All offense and struggling on the defensive end for sure. I mean, Ben, is it Cricky? I've heard it pronounced multiple ways. Ben Cricky's been great for them. Transferred in from Valparaiso, is averaging 18.3 points per game. 124 offensive rating. I mean, that's that. I don't think anyone expected that. He is 1 for 2 from 3 on the season. I'm curious to see how good of a shooter he is, but really when you're putting up 18 points a game, that's not really a concern. You're getting it done one way or another. Stanford, he's no stranger to anyone who follows Big Ten basketball. He's putting up a respectable 15. Tony Perkins, 11.5. He's a veteran who's been around for a long time. But with the typical Fran McCaffrey team, being a lot of offense and limited defense, there's always the games like they're good for like 2 or 3, maybe sometimes 4 upsets in a season. And Iowa is a team right now that just terrifies me because they're a team that can catch fire from 3. The one thing that's impressive about them too is they take care of the basketball. They're only 4th. They have the 4th lowest turnover percentage in college basketball right now. They're an experienced team, a senior-led team, and they're a team that is going to really make some noise. They're going to really shake up the Big Ten standings, I think. And I fear that it might be against Purdue, unfortunately.
I mean, it's always possible. Whenever you have the offensive output that somebody like Iowa has, I know I was talking a lot about Michigan like that, but you're right. I think that the senior leadership is here more with Iowa. They have really good freshmen, but they have that senior leadership they need to make those things happen and to really shake things up. I think the biggest thing with Fran McCaffrey teams is they're always able to beat you, but they're never able, in my mind at least, they're never able to be that consistent team who's going to win the tournament or who's going to make it to the Elite Eight or the Final Four or anything like that, because they just rely on their offense so much. I don't know if they can put it together for 3-4 games in a row against really tough teams.
And historically, they're never out of a game either.
Right.
You can be up 15 against a Fran McCaffrey team and blink, and then it's a 3-point game every time. But you're absolutely right, and that unfortunately, you don't expect them to make a deep tournament run or win the conference, but any given night, their ability to upset anybody is pretty high. I feel like higher than in any Big Ten team that we've seen recently.
And it's the nature of their game. Like, these upsets aren't even. It's the most drastic upsets there are.
Yeah.
Like, their ability. I mean, Iowa gonna Iowa. That's just how it is. They can look like world beaters one night when all their shots are falling, and they look flat as hell if they aren't.
Well, it was like last year against Ohio State was the team that like broke their 12-game losing streak or something like that, and everybody thought, "Oh, Ohio State's back," and then like, no, you go on a 6-game losing streak after. Sorry, Burke, go ahead.
No, it is. It's just the nature of this program. It's so wild that he can do it year after year without a letdown, and just how they are the identity of the squad remains constant. No matter what brothers you're throwing out there, it remains constant. Like,
I like
in a night where they are converting 17% on threes, like they were in that Oklahoma game, they stand a next to absolute zero chance of winning that game. But I mean, on top of that, like, the most punchable face in this conference, Peyton Sandford, when he's going over on the night, good luck, Iowa.
Does Iowa have the record for most punchable faces year in and year out? Because I always heard people say that about Jordan Bohannon.
Yeah, I mean, Peyton Sandford, I said this on my podcast. I was like, Peyton, if the Cold War was on the line and Peyton Sandford had a step in the ring with Ivan Drago, I would have to root for Ivan Drago. I just cannot stand that kid. And then with Cricky, it has been against this competition. I am interested to see once the brutal nature of Big Ten play gets into it, how his game translates there. And then I just wanted to end this saying, in full transparency, this is the one head that Mike Woodson still has to collect out of the Big Ten. We have yet to beat Iowa. So Iowa is a sore subject for me.
There you go, Iowa fans. That's your compliment. After
there you go. Yeah, you guys have our number, but God, you have some punchable faces.
You know what? It's kind of a compliment because you only hate people that are good, right? You're not going to be like, oh, I can't stand, 8.
It's somewhere in the brain next to love. It's somewhere in the brain next to love.
Yeah. So Iowa fans, we're saying some good things about you. It just might not sound too nice. Frank, you got your buddy here, Dylan. Hey, I know that Frank guy. Dude's got a big old brain. And some may say the Boiler Express podcast has some punchable faces. So I guess they got the most punchable faces in the big banter sports. But I think this Iowa team, like I said, the tournament thing, watch them this year make a deep run in the tournament and make me eat my words, because it's going to happen at some point. There's going to be a year where they get hot in the tournament and they make an Elite Eight and challenge for the Final Four, something like that. I just don't think that they're built to do that year in and year out and make those things happen. So
I'm going to drop an unplanned question just for fun, really quick. Over under 4.5. Do we see FranCon come out this season? How many times? You're going to take the under or the over?
I mean, it happens almost more than that every season. So
I think this stands to be his most frustrating season. And I mean, he doesn't have a Murray.
Yeah.
I'm taking the over there.
If he can stare down another ref, that's what I want to see.
That was hilarious.
That was all time.
That was classic.
Oh my God.
I don't know who was more uncomfortable, him or the ref, but yeah.
Oh my God,
Was
or
it
just
him or the
everybody
ref
watching
that's-
at home. I think that had to be it.
Was it him or the ref that stepped forward? I think he stepped forward, didn't he?
I think he did, and the ref did not care at all.
Yeah, he
just
just kept
stared
staring.
right back. Yeah.
That was, oh my God.
Oh man, I love and I hate Fran at the same time.
Yeah. Again, just a very punchable face in this on this team.
All right.
God, you love to hate that guy.
Yeah, you do. Unplanned question, but so since Frank asked one, I get to ask one, right? Just give me your top 3 teams in the Big Ten right now. Who do you like playing the best basketball? I'll go first, so make sure you guys got some time to think. I think right now my top 3 teams, obviously Purdue. I don't think there's anybody playing better than them right now. I don't think there's anybody that's questioning them. I think they might lose a game or two in the Big Ten, but I think that's more just because some teams get hot and maybe find the right groove at the right time. But I don't think anybody's going to question Purdue's winning the conference this year. My number 2 team after beating Alabama, I think it's got to be Ohio State. Bruce Thornton and Roddy Gale look really good. And like I said, Felix Okpara is being that defensive guy that they need, and Zedke's coming off the bench. I like them. And then my 3rd team's probably Illinois. They get a little inconsistent here or there, but Terrence Shannon Jr., you cannot deny he's a good player. And when Coleman Hawkins is on, with both those guys are playing well, really, really tough team to beat. So I like Illinois as well. Frank, who would you say are your top 3 right now?
Yeah, I was looking at the the basketball power rankings and saw that ours were pretty different from everyone else. So my answer is going to be a little unique here. I think anyone who doesn't put Purdue number 1 right now has just a personal vendetta against Purdue.
They might be an IU fan.
Yeah, they could be. Number 2, I actually have Wisconsin. I think they have a lot of momentum right now. They're just smacking Virginia the way they did, right? Granted, like Tennessee, Providence, like they did drop those games, but they seem to have turned it around. And then, against Western Illinois tonight, 71-49. I mean, they defensively, they look great. Offensively, they look great. They're a very complete team, I think. And then I actually had the Buckeyes number 3 for the same reason, mostly because of the Alabama win, not just the fact that they won, but how they won. I mean, they were just scoring points left and right, hitting threes, playing. I mean, they were playing good defense. Alabama hit a bunch of tough shots, but right now, through 6-7 games for each team, those are my top 3.
Don't look now, Frank, but oh shoot, I meant to pull it up. Braden Smith might get a double-double tonight after we were just giving him all that praise. So,
I'm hoping he gets a triple-double this season.
Or triple-double tonight, sorry.
Oh, wow. Oh,
8
man.
rebounds, 9 assists, I think, and 18 points.
Painter will pull him. He won't keep him in, guaranteed.
Painter
Painter does not care about stuff like that. Yeah.
Burke, what are your top 3?
I mean, it's Purdue number 1. It's Purdue number 1.
Yeah.
And everyone keeps talking about this Wisconsin team, and I must need to watch them more, because the one game I did watch them was Providence, and then I watched them quite a bit last season, and I just thought, hey, they're bringing back a lot of the same, and people can talk about, hey, they're bringing back a lot of experience, but I thought that experience kind of hit its ceiling last season. Connor Essegian hasn't taken the stride that everyone thought he was going to. I would say after Alabama, I'm going to put Ohio State number 2. In my number 3 spot, I would have Illinois. But what I will say about Illinois, they play their best ball when Coleman Hawkins is on.
Right.
But since he's gone down, the time that Dane Danger has taken on, it had to have shown Underwood the reliability that he offers this team. Like it can't be like as fiery offensively as it is with Coleman Hawkins, but it is a reliable baseline that he will be able to depend on. But yeah, for my 3, I'm going to go ahead and put the Huskers up there. Like, go ahead. They're playing great. They're undefeated. The moment they lose to Creighton, I'm going to remove them from that. But until then, yeah, let's go ahead and put them there.
You got to believe, Burke. Believe in
Yeah, I hope so, man. I hope so.
Frank, he did get the double-double. He just got another assist. So 19 points, 10 assists, 8 rebounds. Might get that triple-double. We'll see, but definitely the double-double. And Fletcher Lawyer, 2 points.
You just never know what you're going to get from him, do you?
Yeah, no, you don't. You don't. So, all right, well, hey, you guys got any final thoughts before we get out of here? No. All right.
No, hey, glad we could keep it civil, Frank.
Yeah, absolutely. And look forward to touching base with you and having you on this.
Let's
season.
start creating some stuff together. This
Absolutely.
was fun, guys.
For sure. Yeah, you guys welcome back anytime. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Big Ten Huddle. We hope you come back. We are going to be a little bit more chaotic in December, just to let you know. I went ahead and I posted the schedule for what things are going to look like on Twitter. I have that pinned, so it won't be your normal like football episodes on Sunday and Wednesday, basketball on Tuesday, just because it's going to be chaotic with bowl season. It's going to be chaotic with how many days the Big Ten takes off around Christmas and then they come back. So it's just going to be a little bit more chaotic. Go ahead and check that out. I also posted it on YouTube as well, and I don't post on YouTube very often, so it should be pretty easy to find that post in the community section there. But other than that, just thanks for coming. Check out Big Manta Sports, bigmantasports.com for all your Big Ten media needs. We appreciate it. Appreciate you being here, Burke, and appreciate you being here, Frank. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you. Hey, Trey Calloway, trust your